Hello, welcome back to my series, Decades of Action Challenge. I am following the series of essays published on avclub.com and written by Tom Breihan, which is called A History of Violence, about the most significant, most important, most influential action movie of each year, starting with 1968 and moving forward to the present. 50 years of the most important action movies, according to him anyway. I don't agree with all of his choices. For example, we're doing 1977 this week, and 1977 had a really big, very, very significant impact on movies in general, as well as, the big crowd-pleasing, mainstream, big, huge, successful stuff. Tom Breihan is focusing on action movies, and he doesn't consider Star Wars an action movie. Despite this, he nevertheless put Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Aliens, as well as the first two Terminator movies on his list for their respective years. But not Star Wars. It has a sword fight, it has shootouts, it has dogfights, it has two of the biggest explosions in cinema history, relatively speaking, if you want to consider the size of, planetoids blowing up to be, explosions relevant to, like, buildings and what have you, and cars and things like that. Yet it's not an action movie, according to him. Too much sci-fi, I guess. Too much sci-fi, too much fantasy, too much the Force and other, mystical stuff. Not enough straight action. I don't really get it. I'm not really sure where his criteria stops, if he can include Total Recall and Aliens, but not Star Wars. The Terminator movies are okay with their time travel and robots and everything like that, but not Star Wars. Yeah, anyway, he picked Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder is a movie, like the previous week's film, that I'd seen just one time before, just once, and didn't remember a lot about it. So it was, like seeing it for the first time, more or less. I remembered the gist of it, really. So seeing it again earlier this week was, a fresh experience. So the main character of this movie, the director is John Flynn. John Flynn did a movie called The Outfit prior to this, and then he went on to make a few movies that I'm familiar with, but I'm not sure that I've actually seen. Bestseller, which is a sort of hitman thriller with James Woods, Lock-Up, which is a prison drama with Sylvester Stallone, and Out for Justice, which was the Steven Seagal movie that he made right before making Under Siege, which was his big crossover hit. Coincidentally, Under Siege starred Tommy Lee Jones, and Tommy Lee Jones is in Rolling Thunder. But the main character is actually played by William Devane. William Devane is a character actor who I'm familiar with mostly from movies like Hollow Man and Payback. Payback's a Mel Gibson thriller from 1999, and that has a lot of really great character actors playing unsavory people in Mel Gibson's orbit. And William Devane's one of the best guys in that group right there, and he is the main character in this one. He is a Vietnam veteran, prisoner of war, spent 7 years in a prisoner of war camp, kind of like Captain Coons in Pulp Fiction. It's no coincidence, and this is like one of Tarantino's favorite movies of all time, I don't think. That Captain Coons would also be in the prisoner of war camp for the same amount of time in Vietnam. So the movie is set in 1973, and he arrives home basically having been rescued. He's returned home to his family in San Antonio, Texas, along with one of his comrades, played by Tommy Lee Jones, and starts to get back to his regular life, but it's really, really difficult for him. Breihan was talking about how there had been a few Vietnam related action movies prior to this, but this was one of the first that really sort of dealt with the sort of psychological problems of a person who had been in the Vietnam War and been a prisoner of war and had gone through that psychological trauma, coming back and trying to readjust to civilian life, mostly unsuccessfully. He made note of the fact that Paul Schrader is the co-screenwriter of this movie. Paul Schrader, of course, also wrote Taxi Driver, which came out 1 year earlier in '76. Taxi Driver had Vietnam vet as its main character, Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro, and of course that's one of Martin Scorsese's most acclaimed films. But it's not really an action movie, more of a character study, and this technically is an action movie, but again, it's not like there's tons and tons of action and chases and fights and shootouts in movies like this. You know, they just weren't as common, like especially in a movie which seems to have kind of a lower budget than some. According to Breihan, this movie did not do very well. People didn't really like it all that much. And it's no surprise, because this is definitely not, you know, a crowd-pleasing action movie. It's actually quite grim. The main character, William Devane's character, can't really relate to anyone. And he is, you know, welcomed home by his family, but his family is very different. His son has grown up quite a lot in the intervening years and doesn't even really remember him from earlier, because he was just a baby when he left for the service. His wife is actually taken up with another guy, local sheriff. And so their family unit is pretty much permanently fractured. And he, instead of sleeping in a bedroom in the house, actually makes a room for himself in the work shed outside the actual house. He just can't adjust to being a normal person in regular old suburbia anymore. There's another character in this movie who basically is part of the welcoming party. She works as a waitress in a local bar. She's played by an actress named Linda Haynes. Not really familiar with her. The last movie that she did was in 1980, a movie called Brubaker with Robert Redford. She has sort of like developed kind of a little crush on him, and is persistent in pursuing, you know, spending some time with him. She was one of the people basically welcomed home at the welcoming ceremony, in which he receives from a local car dealership a big bright red convertible, along with a whole suitcase full of silver dollars, over 2,000 of them, one for each day that he spent in the POW camp. Unfortunately, this welcoming home was highly televised and publicized, and the fact that he has this big suitcase full of silver dollars is enticement to some very bad guys to invade his house and torture him and mutilate him and kill his wife and son, just so they can get their hands on, you know, about $2,500 in this big case. Too bad that he didn't announce there on TV that he was gonna, you know, take it to the bank like the next day, you know, so it wouldn't be sitting around his house as an invitation to theft. It's rather unfortunate. So, you know, his wife and kid are dead at this point, and now he's even more sort of removed from normal life because of, you know, the loss of his family. So he's like, okay, you know, well, I've got something to do now. Rather than just try and readjust, I'm going to go on a mission. I'm going to revert to my, you know, military training and hunt down these guys and, you know, kill them. That's you know, the only thing that I really have to do at this point. This waitress, Linda, who's the actress's name is Linda, but the character's name is Linda as well. She kind of comes along for the ride. He invites her to join him for a little trip to Mexico, but she doesn't realize that he's actually sort of playing detective and trying to hunt down these guys. She's very upset when she finds out that he's just basically looking for trouble and is planning on killing some guys. She has, you know, the contrast between the two characters is really noteworthy, very noteworthy, because she's, you know, expresses her feelings a lot and thoughts, and he's just like this stone wall. You know, he doesn't say much. He doesn't, you know, express many feelings or thoughts of any kind. He wears sunglasses most of the time so people can't look in his eyes. And when he does finally track down the guys, some of the guys that are responsible for, you know, harming him, they put his hand into a garbage disposal in his kitchen, so now he's wearing a hook for a hand. He, you know, finds his old comrade Tommy Lee Jones, and they're like, okay, let's go get those guys. And there isn't much discussion about it. It's just something that they know how to do, and so they're going to go do it because they just don't feel like doing much of anything else. So yeah, this is a well-made movie, but it's, you know, deeply unpleasant movie. And a lot of sort of narrative threads are left dangling. For example, the sheriff who William Devane's wife took up with, he sort of tries to help him out, give him some assistance in his mission. But he ends up getting killed, and William Devane doesn't know anything about it. So it's not like he can avenge that guy's death too, because he isn't even aware that he's been killed. Also, there's one of the key members of the gang of bad guys that robbed him and killed his wife and son is missing from the rest of the movie, kind of the ringleader. And the name James Best really stuck out when I watched the opening credits, because James Best I know very well from the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. He played the very silly and stupid Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, who did the bidding of the local big shot businessman Boss Hogg in the TV series. And James Best, you know, is one who's immediately recognizable to anyone who is a fan of that show. Although he is the ringleader in the group of guys that took so much away from William Devane's character, he doesn't show up for the rest of the movie. Never ends up tracking him down. So that's a little unsatisfying, but then again, this is not a movie that is designed to be, you know, really emotionally satisfying anyway. It's very, very bleak. And once the big action starts at the end, they track down, William Devane and Tommy Lee Jones track down a bunch of the guys that were responsible. They end up finding a whole heck of a lot more guys in the place that they're occupying, and they just, you know, shoot at them indiscriminately, pretty much. Whoever's, you know, if you're, you know, a dude in this building, you're pretty much going to be killed by both of these guys. That's the real big set piece in the movie. There's a, you know, the initial sequence where everything terrible happens in William Devane's house. There's a few scattered fistfights and what have you, as William Devane's looking for the culprits. But the only real big action in the movie is what takes place in the end, once they worm their way into this building, William Devane and Tommy Lee Jones, and then pull out their guns and just start blasting away. And much like the Chinese Boxer, which is a movie I reviewed earlier, as soon as that conflict is over with, the movie is immediately over with. The credits just start rolling. There's nothing after it, because, you know, that's really, I guess, sort of in keeping with the mindset of the characters. It's just like, we've got this thing to do, and we're going to do it, and once we're done with it, we're done with it. And there's not a lot of thought spent on what happens after that. And, you know, the movie doesn't either. The movie sort of mirrors that. So it's an admirable film, but again, very bleak, not terribly uplifting in the least, actually. There's a really telling line of dialogue, and Breihan mentions this also in his essay, when William Devane refers to something that happened to him when he was alive. And Linda says, "What do you mean by that?" And basically he's talking about the period of his life before he became a POW and endured torture at the hands of the Vietnamese on a daily basis, and had to sort of like disconnect emotionally and change himself emotionally in order to endure it. So he was normal before, he was a regular person before, and now he'll never be that again. So it's like he stopped living at that point, even when he was rescued and came back. Yeah, quite a film. Unsatisfying in some ways, in the right ways, I think. Yeah, that was that's Rolling Thunder. Very interesting film. I am going to be doing another video, of course, next week, a week from today. The next film on Breihan's list is from '78. It's a film directed by Walter Hill called The Driver. Never seen this movie before. All I know about it is that Ryan O'Neal is in it, and it's very similar to the Ryan Gosling film Drive in a lot of ways. Just called The Driver, so we'll see about that. But before next week, in the intervening time, I'm going to make one more video for this series, which is basically a sort of a summary of the last 10 years. I started with '68, so every 10 videos, I'm going to make another one sort of summarizing what my favorite bits are about that period. It's really kind of unfair, I think, to compare action movies in the '70s to action movies that came out in the last 10 years, because the amount of resources, you know, and the tools available to people that are making action movies are so much greater now than they were then. Plus, there's just the issue of tone and everything like that, I guess. You know, just sort of the attitudes towards by people who make action movies and what the audience likes and what have you. So I was going to do basically every 10 years make another sort of summary video talking about what films I liked the best and least, and what set pieces I thought were really impressive and things like that. And that's going to come sometime between now and next week when I do my video on the driver. Thank you very much for watching. As always, below you will find in the link in the video description to Breihan's essay if you'd like to read about what he thinks of Rolling Thunder. The link to the playlist where I have all these videos located, also my Facebook page. And I just want to mention one more thing, and that is that Luke Ryan and another guy on YouTube known as Forkerball did this series, their own series, which sort of inspired this one, which is the Epic Film Challenge, which they look at basically movies listed in a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, and that was sort of how I got the idea to do this series in the first place. So check out their channels too, please do. Thank you very much for watching, appreciate it. I'm like taking little bits of lint and like throwing them into the garbage can over there. That's why I've been doing that throughout this video. Sorry if that's been distracting. I've got a couple other ideas for videos and that I might do over the next week, so there's that to look forward to as well. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye.